know what you don't know, and no matter how hard you try to do risk assessment and figure all that out, something's going to screw it up. And then who are you in that moment, you know? And so it's been interesting to me. I think even in business, it's finding people to support us and partner with from a leadership position who, as best you can, you get to know who they are in the moments when the system is stress tested. You know, are they are they going to assign blame? Are they going to deflect? Are they going to defend? Or are they just going to nod their head and say, "Yep," and pull up their sleeves? And what do we do about it? How do we work this through? And yeah, so it's just kind of interesting.
It's a good word. It's a good word, and you can look that up. But I think interesting is when it engages your curiosity in a focal sort of a way. You know, the being interested in something necessarily means that it not only is like a shiny object, but it's a shiny object with potential outcomes that are worth getting, more information about.
My
And
mentor
all,
always said, "Let it be interesting, not important."
yes, 100%. Yeah, that's the Stephen Covey four quadrants as well. That's where you want to play. Important and not urgent.
Mhm.
So, back to thinking in terms of individual human beings. If you were to close your eyes right now and imagine, a little boy and a little girl that are going to live here in like seven generations, what do we consider a generation? Like 25 years? So that's what, 175 years from now? It's actually not that far away when you stop and think about it.
Mm.
And you can wrap your mind around that. 175 years ago, well, you stop and think about it. We really had a whole lot of this country that we didn't know much about geographically and terrain wise, and there wasn't a lot of population that difficult to get to. What sort of things will be interesting to us? What sort of things will engage and capture our intellect that we become curious about and we study? That same sort of first step in consulting on the reservation when we go there, we've got to do the baseline survey. We have to capture our own data and not use the other data that's available from past successes. I so agree with you, Ken. It's like what they say, the worst are educated people because they are blind to the things they have yet to learn. They think they know something.
I think there's a dip that's I've heard that recently, and I, there's this kind of dip where if you stay with something long enough, education can be a very powerful. Being educated on something, you just got to know whether or not they've come to the place of being comfortable with saying I don't know again. Because that's when you don't know anything, it's easy to say I don't know. Then you start to learn, you do your research on YouTube or whatever, and you get really passionate about the things you're learning. So so then you feel like and you want to inform it's that whole Dunning-Kruger thing. You want to inform, but the most knowledgeable people I've been fortunate enough to work with are always curious and understand that they have a lot of blind spots and there's a lot that they don't know. And I remember one of my friends who's a martial artist, after 40 years of training, he said he learned a new kick from a 4-year-old and just watched them do it. And it was, just got out of his own head and all the things that he learned. And instead of corrected it, he was like, "Why'd you do it that way?" And actually learned something about it that, ended up helping, older martial artists who were over the age of 40 and starting to have some hip changes in the hip and flexibility. And it was a really cool thing. So he was open to it. He was an incredibly knowledgeable expert who had found his way through that dip and into the place of being comfortable with not knowing everything and using his knowledge to now be responsive to those variables as they come into play.
Yeah, that's so important. You know, and I wonder, are we teaching our children to to question in a powerful way? Are we teaching them that once you've learned a certain amount of things that you have to defend those? You know? Are we teaching what are we teaching children?
Depends on who the teacher is.
Yeah, and there's a system at work here, shall we say. What is that system generating in terms of I don't know where I would go to get an answer to my question, to be honest with you. You know, in 2022, I don't know who I would ask. I could probably ask that same question of 25 different people in education right now and get a range of different answers.
Well, I guess the thing that I'm thinking about is Ken was talking about that with his, with the person who went and learned a new move from a 4-year-old is, this ability to be curious is, inquisitive. And I think I look at that from my yoga practice because, even though you do yoga in a class, it's still very individual. And so, am I curious about my own body and what it can do? Am I curious to understand and to recognize and to, that's why the practice never gets boring to me because I always learn something. I always experience something different. And, to me, are we passing even that idea on to our children? It's like, that ability of being curious and inquisitive and, because I think that leaves the door open for that whole idea that you don't know everything. And there's always more to learn and more to experience, even with something, if you learn something totally about a subject, there's still more that you do not know. And
Sure.
there's still more to be curious about. So are we teaching, I mean, for me, I grew up, I was a big, we spent a lot of time outside. There was this whole idea of being inquisitive and investigatory and curious and learn, kind of that whole experience. And so, pass that on to your children, like get them out, get them out in nature. I think nature teaches us a lot.
I think we've changed our interaction from like parent to child to that kind of that parents aren't perfect, and I think a lot of people that I read their motivational books on how to handle the next generation is to not lie to them and tell them like parents aren't perfect and they're human beings and that you don't have to be either to provide your to be a model for them to show them if you make a mistake in life there's ways to correct it or this is how you grow and all that other. I know I grew up but I'm thinking my mother was perfect until she cried once. I never saw her cry till my sister eloped. And then it was the floodgates opened up. But I thought she was perfect and never cried and never nothing ever bothered her. And then that being a role model can wreak havoc on your own life. Going, well, my mother was perfect. Why can't I handle all this stuff? She did everything.
It's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much pressure. And I think
They pretty much had us snowed, didn't they?
yeah, but not to a beneficial aspect. For the children themselves. That's why counselors make so much have so many clients. We're all
Well,
trying
if
to
we're
do.
looking, isn't it interesting though? If you're looking back on generations, it's kind of like, you know, canned food or the education system from the 50s and 60s. It's you've got an exploding population. How do you mass produce,
Mhm.
and preserve food? How do you mass produce and preserve education? Like it's so they came up with solutions and there were unintended consequences, second and third order consequences, and then you relook at it. So it's interesting. I mean, you know,
We
you
use the
know,
food analogy here. These folks are eating from the center of the store, man. They are not buying from the outside walls of this store. There's nothing organic going on. It is totally canned and it is designed to put everybody through the same experience, some faster, some slower. I love what you're saying, Ken. What if the whole idea of how you teach a group of children to think were to be completely re-examined.
Mhm. And also, how do you, how do you get to a place where you can safely ask the question without triggering all of the yeah buts or the defenses? Like, for example, how do you how do you make the healthier, um, you know, like fresh foods, like fruits and vegetables, less expensive than the bag of Fritos. Like, how do you flip that model so that it's, I mean, I remember years ago reading, I think it was in Chip Heath's book Switch. And it's just talking about they got a whole town to lose weight by making the low fat milk cheaper. So people just bought it, and then that's what's in their refrigerator. So that's what they're drinking. So, is there a way to make, fresh squeezed orange juice less expensive than a 2-liter bottle of Coke? I don't know, but, you'll that conversation, whenever you hear conversations like that come up, from what I've seen anyway, it turns into all of this, well, don't take away my freedom to choose this or that, or, it becomes about something else instead of just, like Lisa said, curiosity. Are you curious about, you know, just, could there even be an answer, and can we have that discussion without, you know, all of the clutter getting in the way of it? So, what would it look like to have a classroom full of 30 children all able to learn in the way that's most effective to them? That's the question I ask on a daily basis and have for almost 30 years now. I don't have an answer yet.
So
But,
we need to get somewhere around 7 to 10% of a population being interested in that approach, and
yeah,
then
well, I
that
think
that starts to
there,
turn the culture. You know,
yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because there are people interested in that. They just quickly get defeated because it's so much easier to just criticize, you know, an idea or puncture it. And I've faced that. I've gone into, businesses and schools and, try to bring that, just that possibility up, and I just feel deflated very quickly because all I hear is the resistance to why, and they have every reason to feel that way. They're tired, they're overworked, they're stressed, they feel defeated, so they just pass that on to you. So, so then you end up saying, you know what? I'm not going to pour my energy into that. I became a martial arts teacher because I didn't believe I could actually make a difference in kids' lives in the public school system. So I needed to go into an entrepreneurial environment where I could be myself and have them for years and be able to test things and, do it that way. So, so I basically walked away from making a difference in public education because I didn't think it would work. I didn't want to put the energy into it.
we had those conversations, and it really that whole idea, the notion of asking questions about the status quo in certain types of institutions, it's a guppy in a shark tank. It's got no life expectancy whatsoever. First
Mhm.
of all, you have to train people into even how to have that conversation, which is a lot of work.
Yep.
The kids get it far faster than than the adults do. They will warm right up to that. If you tell kids you are going outside, we're not going to be looking at books today. Books are going to be withheld from you for a little while because they're very special, and you're going to have to earn the right to read books. We're going to have you just look at pictures. We're going to have this is the thing that's the craziest for me is it's almost like kids today that I've talked to regard reading books like punishment. Like this is cruel and unusual, something for them to do. The whole notion of having books that they call them, what do they call them, paragraph books that have chapters, as opposed to what is that, um, something novels, pictorial novels, or something. They're comic books, right?
Oh,
And
graphic novels,
graphic
maybe.
novels. Yes, thank you. Between us, we make a whole brain.
Well, as Ken was talking about, the education system, and I'm thinking about the world I came from, which is in the health business, like the health world,
Right.
and to have people change from the mindset of wellness care versus